So specifically don't do sorry, Carol, don't do the Google HP type companies. We do the users, the user group, the users. So we talk to CIOs and CTOs in those sorts of organizations. So I want to thank you for those who took part. You will get a copy of the report today. I'll email it out. That QR code should work after 8 o'clock. If it doesn't, then I've got the wrong. But everything was going live at 8 o'clock on our website this morning. But I will definitely be sending you a copy today. At the beginning of the year, we've been working. My graphic designer. We've worked together since I started 10 years ago. She's a young mum. She's doing amazing stuff for us. But we decided that we couldn't find well-priced, good quality stock photo of people in New Zealand using technology. It didn't reflect who we were. Very difficult to get Māori and Pacifica, but also the multicultural range of people we wanted to go. And so we did our own photo shoot. Now, I wasn't supposed to be in the shoot, but I got dragged in. So I'm on the front of the report. Now, I battled hard not to be on the front, but for the fourth year in a row, I gave in to the team that decided that they put my face on the front. Should say one of our star, Harvey over here is also, you may see him when you read the report, I'm not sure, but there are photos, there are standard stock, but there are photos of our people doing things in there. And you'll start to see those through. So like the imaging that we're using for Tech Users Summit in September is also people who are part of 2Ns and part of our Flint program. I should just also point out, I have some of my board members here today. So Sid from Network for Learning, David from Worldline, and Tristan, who's the chair of 2Ns, and Liz, who was my chair prior to Tristan, but is now the co-chair of the Tech Leaders Group, which she will talk about later as well. So I wanted to start with some key takeaways from the report, and I did about 3 or 4 media pieces yesterday, as I said. There's a couple of things that came out for me. First of all, the 2 big issues that CIOs are looking at, and I'll just use CIO as a generic term, is security. So how am I worried about my defence plan? I'm worried about security in my organisation. But the really interesting thing is once they got past that, they started to talk about, I'm concerned about New Zealand as a nation. What's our security plan? Where's the guidance and the leadership at that level? And I'm concerned about our customers and our individuals. So the thing that I tried to talk to media about yesterday was people in these senior executive roles, while they're concerned about their own business, they're actually concerned about New Zealand Inc. a lot as well. They want to pay it forward, which is what we talk about is with the Tech Leaders Group. Is we want to take what we've got, we want to share it, we want to collaborate and work together where we can, compete where we can as well. But which is one of the beauties of a group like Tech Leaders or 2Ns, because we can bring people together. The other one was AI, and it wasn't just about what is Gen AI, what's so cool, it is what am I going to do with it? And there's a really good quote in there around, there's one from Carl from Datacom about last year, AI has been around a long time, but last year, Gen AI became a kitchen table discussion. So that's one of them. And the other one was around, I've got my CEO, I've got my board, and I've got my staff asking me, can we use AI? Can we do this? What are you doing with AI? And it's like, they're just trying to work out what to do with this tool. And so that's one of the things. So at 2Ns, we've kicked off some working parties around, I sent out an email to members and I said, I thought I might get about 12 people interested. And I got 52. So that's not a working party. That's like, it's a collection, right? So we're doing things around people, policy, and we're going to use the third P, promotion. It's really about understanding. So those are the 2 big issues. But the other ones that really got me, the skills conversation. Last year, in 2023, a lot of conversation around migration settings, getting those right, getting senior staff up. That didn't really come through this year. What really came through was a real concern about the pipeline and about the fact that the ITPs had been cancelled. So that work that had been done to encourage people into IT had gone. They just basically ended that program. So where was the next generation and how were we going to encourage people and kids to be engaged in tech? And it's not just, I don't want to say it that way. I mean, we're doing quite a bit of work about encouraging Māori and Pacifica, but I did hear this really interesting story of Diesel one school in Auckland, where someone was there to talk about technology, and they watched the parents encourage their kids to go and hear about being a doctor and a lawyer. It's like, that's great, but in my perspective, I think we've got enough lawyers. But technology is a great career as well to think of it, to get into. So it's not just it's across the board. We've got to look at that. And the last one that I just wanted to bring up was around the use of technology. So it's around the AI. It's around off-premise computing. So you want to call it cloud, whatever you want to call it, that sort of stuff. And the third one, which has just escaped my mind, which I was thinking about anyway, look, quantum computing. That's right. And so they were keeping an eye on those sorts of things and looking around. So look, thank you so much for coming this morning. That's the report. We'll be talking about it some more with Nikki, but so I'd like to ask Nikki from One, who is, I think, probably started with us with the report 4 years ago.
Yes, I remember you and I having a chat about doing this report, and we said, why not? We'll come on board. We'd love to support it, love to sponsor it. So
thanks, Nikki.
This is the 4th year that One New Zealand has been involved, and it's grown over the time. First time we've done a breakfast, so thank you for turning up, and thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in the interviews. So we've got 3 awesome panelists today who are going to come have a bit of a chat about the report. So we've got Tony Beard, who's our Chief Technology Officer at One New Zealand, if you'd like to come up. Sure. So Tony's responsible for the delivery of all core infrastructure, including networks, platforms, for both, you can sit there. Yeah. It looks after networks and platforms for both consumer and enterprise customers, as well as cybersecurity, enterprise level IT systems, and oversees the infrastructure partner teams. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
We also have Liz Gosling from AUT. If you'd like to come up, Liz. Liz is the Chief Technology Officer and CISO at Auckland University of Technology. She's worked in the IT industry for 3 decades across New Zealand. Thank you.
Thanks, Tristan.
And we have Simon Bridges, who is the CEO of the Auckland Business Chamber and recently appointed the chair of Waka Kotahi. He was National MP for Tauranga, former New Zealand Leader of the Opposition, Senior Cabinet Minister. And during his tenure as a minister, helped with the nation building infrastructure at UFB, which I think all of us are very pleased about. So,
and RCG.
And RCG, yes, which
I was chair of
and Student Z.
Exactly. I was going to bring up.
Didn't properly understand at the time.
I was going to bring up NZ. Good call.
Okay, we'll do questions as we go through it, but I'll just ask a few questions to get started. So I'm not sure if anyone's had a chance to read the report. It's just come live, so we'll give you the sneak peek, and you can have a look afterwards. So just to get started, I'll go around the line. Could you share a couple of thoughts from the report? Craig's given us a bit of summary, but anything that stood out to you, Tony, when you were reading it?
Yeah, look, anything where you see the country going backwards in its international competitiveness is a worry. We are an island nation very far away from our trading partners. So anything that allows us to be more productive, more efficient, and able to export more, including high-tech exports, I think is incredibly important. Our primary produce, we need to be more efficient on the farm, so the use of tech and primary produce as well is really important. So yeah, I'm always concerned when I see us going backwards in this sort of area because it's so important to our economy.
Liz, any bills from you?
So the report highlighted that we'd had another year of rapid change, but I think we all have to get used to the fact that it's always going to be rapid change. It's been like this for the last few years with pandemics. We've now got climate issues, which many of us felt very deeply in 2023. So looking at how technology can actually support lessening our carbon emissions, and I'm sure you've all got, I'm sure your organisations all do carbon reports and all the rest of it, and scope 1 and scope 2. But I think that focus on climate change really has to be front of mind. And the other thing is AI. I mean, I think we can all see AI offers opportunities, but you've got what's essentially a brand new technology that we all need to experiment with, married with organisational business case processes that want ROI. And it's very difficult, it's very difficult to demonstrate ROI on something when you actually just need to play with it. But I think as a country, AI could really help New Zealand, but we need to we need to front foot this. And some organisations are and some organisations aren't.
Yeah, well, firstly, apologies for my voice, it sounds okay right now, but croaky. Secondly, I just, congratulations to Craig and one for doing the report. I said to Craig, in the latrines, actually, if you must know, it's, you know, I read a lot of reports. I think it's a really good one. It's got some really strong points in it. Incidentally, I can't see him here. He's obviously gone out to do a media interview, but I didn't think it was him on the front. Oh, there he is. I thought that was a photo shoot out of Milan, actually. And thirdly, the reason I sort of came along actually was because I'm not a top technologist by any means, but I think it was true. And if we again, you know, generically talk to CIOs, you know, you're not, and I'm not saying this to buddy you up, you know, you've always been important, but you know, increasingly in the business community and actually New Zealand's future, you're very important, you know, characters and making decisions, making recommendations to boards and so on. I mean, I think the two things that I would highlight in the report, I mean, firstly, I like what Tristan said at the start, which is that you know, technology is here to save us, or is it? Yeah, I think we are at a kind of, and you can always say this at level, but we're at a bit of a moment. I think in New Zealand, it could kind of go either way. We could become a real winner in technology, generally speaking, in terms of our SMEs and accelerating what they do with it, but also, you know, the technology sector or sectors really becoming, you know, big exporters around the world. They already are in niche areas, but could go better. Or I think could continue to regress. I mean, that's what the index sort of says. And I think, you know, we'll get into the solutions, but I think, you know, clearly there's things around skills, regulation, policy, look where we put our resources, and I think just actually intentionality as a country. I mean, I think the second point, which I'm sure we'll get to as well, but you know, I think the themes are, look, at one level you'd say, but the good ones always are, they're obvious. I mean, AI, yeah, well, we'll talk about that. I won't skills, you know, it's receded a little bit, but I think, you know, it's perennial and it's not going anywhere, and we'll talk about that. And I think you know, cyber security, it was surprised to me, actually. I hadn't really thought about this in a while, but just the absence of kind of regulatory and policy framework in that area, and that's clearly a gap that should be filled.
Thanks, Simon. Actually, one of the points you raised was there about some of the gaps, and digital skills was a topic that a lot of you all mentioned in the report. That AI talent concentration, digital skills. How do we make sure that we have the pipeline coming through in Aotearoa, New Zealand? The report also highlighted that in 2023, New Zealand's ranking in the Portland's Network Readiness Index fell 4 positions. So we fell from 19 to 23, which I think is something that none of us like to see. So what do you reckon, Simon, in terms of how do we bridge that digital skills gap?
Well, I'd love to tell you I've got sort of 20 amazing answers that from me, I don't, but I do have a few from others. And I think from, you know, some work that the Auckland Chamber that I'm at has done with some of you actually and others around, you know, positioning Auckland and what it should do. And skills is clearly, you know, a cross-cutting theme, but arguably alongside some infrastructure work that I think could be done. Look, here's a rag bag. I mean, I think one of the things we could do that applies more generally, but I think in our schools, we don't need to just focus on STEM. We need to focus on STEAM. I think arts in there. I think we want to see more creative Kiwis coming out of our schools. I think there's definitely something in the IT apprenticeship space, but more broadly, you know, if you stand back and there's a lot of detail underneath this that needs to be worked through. But I think, you know, we've got to really work on providing clear career pathways into tech from school and into higher education. Here's a sort of depressing stat. I acknowledge I don't have a more recent one, and it might be somewhat different right now. But from 2013 to 2022, New Zealand's tertiary sector only increased total enrolments in tech-specific courses from 12,635 to 12,945. Right, so fundamentally, if you're talking about vocational stuff, and I know AUT does some really good work in that, we need to see our courses more clearly align with what we're trying to, probably not the right words, but churn out. And I think you know, actually getting a closer integration between tech employers and tertiary providers is incredibly important. I mean, I could go on. I think there's other things that we could do, but I think there's some big ones. So that pathway from school to tertiary, and then that, you know, set of courses and the pathway and the integration into what we call the real world, I suppose, the business community and tech. really important.
Thank you. Liz, do you have any builds on it from a?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts, not necessarily from an AET
Mm.
perspective, but more a personal perspective. So looking at the fall in the rankings, I went to look at who the top 5 countries are in the Portuguese Network Readiness Report, and they are the USA, Finland, Singapore, Sweden, and the Netherlands. Now, there's at least 3 countries in there that are not that dissimilar to New Zealand. So my immediate question is, well, what are those countries doing differently? Given that Finland's a tiny little country too. And Sweden's not that big. Are there lessons that we should, as a country, be learning from them? Ange Nash, who is currently at the AA, isn't here, but she and I normally come to these events and we look around the room and we go, well, why aren't there more women in tech? And Nikki, acknowledging that you are here, great to see you. But we do need to get more diversity in tech, and Two Hands have done a lot, both with Maori and Pacific, but also with the Flint program. So I would encourage you to talk to Craig about what Flint does and actually participate in coming to the events to talk to the up and coming young people. They're actually great fun. I mean, I quite often go and do the speed dating and all the rest of it. I think the path, there's still, I've got 2 daughters. There's still a very, in the high school space, there's still this idea that tech is for boys. And the schools don't help it by sort of setting it up in a kind of, way that some, young adolescent males feel comfortable with. And it sort of excludes women, young women, who actually make great, project managers, coders, all sorts of things. So yeah, I think there's a lot to do.
Very interesting points. And as you said, a lot that we can all do as well than others is to ensure that we promote more females as well, particularly within the workforce. I'm going to change tack a bit.
No.
Oh, you want to go?
Yes, thank you very much.
Just because these are white men.
No, I don't disagree. I agree with everything you
Yeah.
guys have said. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say something different rather than just agree with you, because I do agree with everything you've said. But let's look at it from a different angle. Look at investment. So I have actually just been to the USA, Canada, Sweden, Finland, and the UK. Just got back 2 weeks ago. One thing I noticed in the USA, there is a desire to have investors who invest in long-term technology. This country lacks that investment portfolio. The minute you see the big hyperscalers, the owners that set those companies up still are actively in some way involved, even though they're multi-billion-dollar organizations. This country gets $10 million and they flick it off.
Yeah.
So there's no long-term sustainability of reinvestment and invention and innovation that will encourage people to get into the industry. Point number 1. Point number 2, there is a focus in certain areas that are going to shift the dial, not a broad brush approach to everything. So if I'm going to focus on AI, I'll focus on AI. If I'm going to focus on radio technology, aka Sweden, Finland, Ericsson, Nokia, I'll focus on radio technology. They find specialist areas where they can be world leaders, not average at everything. So specialization, an investment environment that means people stay on and make that industry even bigger. I can see, I'd say the likes of Google's and others, those owners are still actively involved in reinvestment and innovation, and the list goes on with, Microsoft and others. So those 2 aspects. The third one, which is somewhat controversial, is we're talking about young people, but I'm turning off a lot of legacy technology at the moment. And those engineers have been around for many, many years and are very experienced. So we're actively retraining people that want to be retrained from the old copper, plain old telephony landline service into AI. Should they want to be data scientists, retrain, there's another 5, 10, 15 years of really good, solid experience. So yes, agree, young, female, education, tick. But also look at the other end of the spectrum and also specialise and have an investment culture.
And just very briefly, I think Tony makes a really important point, which is that actually for New Zealand to do well in technology, the answer is, and it's unfashionable, probably has been, but to pick winners. We fundamentally need to just choose some areas that we're going to niche in and go really well. I mean, the port that we were involved in, we effectively for Auckland said creative tech, fintech, health tech. You can argue with that list, but but in the end, they're both worth a couple of billion each. In Auckland terms, you know, agri-tech, I don't know, Waikato or Canterbury or wherever it is can have it, and we should go, but I think that's, you know, it's probably more controversial than it sounds in practice, but it's exactly the right point.
Yeah, great.
Each of those areas have specialised, as I said, you know, Sweden, radio and telecommunications, California is more cloud and desktop, and yeah.
And we've done a great job with fintech so far. As I said, we have like businesses like Xero, but yeah, how do we keep backing those winners? I'm going to change tact a little bit because there's lots of other stuff in this report. It's a big report. Cybersecurity was another key theme that came through. Gen AI tools such as chatbots, text to image have removed barriers for cyber criminals, enabling the creation of believable scams. I think we see it on the news a lot. And NetSafe came up with another thing over the weekend. Does Tony, I'm going to put this for you for a start. Does cybersecurity keep you up at night? And what more can we be doing in New Zealand to combat the bad actors?
Yeah, well, I'm actually only 21 and not going grey. Yes, it does. So we have our corporate risk register. There are 10 risks on that risk register, and the first 3 all land on my shoulders. So the first one is cybersecurity, the second one is network reliability, and the third one is IT reliability. So those top 3 risks are all in my remit. So, you know, we normally do all of our upgrades after midnight for anything that's serious. So normally at about 4 in the morning, you're checking that everything's come back and everything's operational. So cybersecurity, one of the things I was up in London for was, since we left Vodafone Group and we're now 100% Kiwi owned, thank you, we have to get cyber insurance. So I was re-pitching our cyber insurance up in the City of London. And so there's significant presentations around all of that. And it's a common thing around the world. Like the likes of DDoS attacks are actually coming down. They were sort of at their peak during COVID-19, but you're starting to see things like exposed APIs being hacked. There's been a number of recent examples of that. But it doesn't also change the fact you've got to do your basics well. Things like make sure you get your reflector outs on your border gateways sorted out. I think there's been a couple of big telcos internationally that have made those basic mistakes. So it's basics. It's looking at what your threat actors are doing, especially with the geopolitical aspects of the world at the moment. We're lucky. We talked about before about our isolation and the need for this high-tech industry. That, in some respects, is one of our cybersecurity advantages. I wouldn't take it for granted, by the way, but quite often it's the UK or America that gets targeted before little old New Zealand. But let's not paint a target on our backs either.
Definitely not.
But definitely keeps me up at night.
And I'm guessing a few people in this room would have a similar sort of a remit. Liz, I'm going to ask you a different question. AI was sort of building on one of the other points before. AI has come through a lot. Craig highlighted it within the preview. Widespread use of generative AIs could be one of the most disruptive trends of this decade. It can transform virtually every organisation and how they operate. This is obviously lots of positives and negatives. Tony talking about reskilling just before, but also productivity benefits that can come through. What do you think that New Zealand could do as an industry and individually within this, people within this room, to make sure that we embrace AI and those expected productivity benefits?
I mean, I think the key is actually early adoption of AI technologies. And I think I already touched upon the fact that, you know, the early adoption and experimenting and failing fast with technologies when you've also got a corporate business case process that you have to work through is actually quite, well, it's a complete dichotomy, frankly. But I think I think those organisations that take that step forward and just go for it and experiment, and some of the experiments will fail, are actually the ones that will be setting themselves up for the future. You know, there's competitive advantage to be had there in all industries if you do this stuff right. Yeah, that would be I think that's my key thoughts.
Any builds in there?
On AI, well, look, everyone's got a reckon, haven't they? People get paid a lot of money. I get, in my ignorance, paid sometimes quite a lot of money to give speeches on this topic. And you know, I asked ChatGPT what to say. I mean, I think, you know, what I would say, and I think I'll be proved right on, is that, you know, there's a lot of hype on it that came through in the report. It is, I suspect that it is less significant in the near term than one says, but it will in the end be more significant in the long term. I don't buy into this nonsense that it's going to sort of make everyone unemployed and we'll have problems in that area. Look, if you look at the history of technological transformation in the world, you know, even, I mean, it's mundane, is it? But, you know, dishwashers and laundromats and all these things that mechanized homework, we only get busier as a species and we find new ways to do work and so on. So I think what it will mean is things like, I mean, just take our little business, you know, it's a, 75, 80 person outfit, the Auckland Business Chamber. We do most of New Zealand's export certification, the world's real Zespri. We're a little company selling, I don't know, deer horn aphrodisiacs into China. To pick something, I'm sure someone does sell that. You will use us and we will certify your documents. At the moment, that is not entirely, but fundamentally a laborious human process, and actually won't require much AI. Fundamentally, it's just automation, isn't it? To see that removed. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to fire the half a dozen people in that sector, in that business unit. But what it does mean, I think, is they will have to use their brains more in high value uses for our clients. And so, you know, I think, look, it's while I'm on a roll, I mean, you know, what we see at the moment, Craig was saying is, you know, everyone, you know, it's a dinner room conversation now. I mean, I think what stupid people do, i.e. most of us, is they use it now to do their comms and their speech and their, you know, I was joking about that, but I have done it once or twice, and various other things. You know, that to me, actually, you're never going to replace humans in some of that stuff. You know, I just personally don't believe. I think the human input. I was watching a doco last night, which is more of an editorial on this amazing Bulgari hotel in Rome. One day when I'm CTO of one, I'll stay there, and it'll be amazing. But you know, but they made the point, which I think is fundamentally right, and creative intellectual endeavors that humans, you know, that none of it is automated. Every piece is handmade. That's in the end where the high end will always be. So, you know, that was the world according to Simon in 4 minutes.
The Bulgari hotel sounds very good to me.
And I think Amazon Prime,
My view is there's always market correction. Many of us lived through the .com. I think AI is a bit of a misused nomenclature at the moment. I think maybe 5-10 years time, I agree with you, it will come to its foray. At the moment, I think it's machine learning rather than artificial intelligence. But that machine learning does have some benefits. We were talking about skills shortages, so you can offload potentially the coding to a algorithm rather than having coders, and those coders can move on to more creative and innovative pursuits. So I think 5 to 10, it'll be AI. It won't destroy the globe. It won't be Star Shield or whatever it used to be with Terminator. But it will provide efficiencies and allow people to be more creative. So I'm optimistic, but it's not here quite yet.
But we do need to invest and experiment to find this out. And I think that's the key thing, just getting on and trying to find out what that technology can do. And looking at, I mean, we're using it at AUT in all kinds of ways. And it is about, as you've said, releasing people's time to do more high value work or more interesting work, because there are a whole range of repetitive tasks in a whole range of industries.
Very good. I'm going to open it up to the audience if anyone's got any questions, any burning questions they want to
Two-part. One, do you think universities are the right vehicle for getting our people skilled to us? And if not, if yes, fine. If not, what are the alternatives there to help us solve that?
I'll go first, and I just need to do my normal. I'm not speaking on behalf of AUT. This is my personal opinion. I think universities actually are the right vehicle, but the fundamental problem is universities to this day, all across the world, think in terms of 3-year degrees. And 3-year degrees are not what people need. They need short, punchy, micro-credential type qualifications. So you can go and do, say, a 3-month online course in, you know, AI or cyber or whatever else it is, to get your people upskilled really quickly so that they become useful to your business. So that's a kind of, you know, The 3-year degree thing might be useful for an 18-year-old who's got to learn a broad range of skills. Nikki, you went to AUT and did comms. So your 3-year comms degree when you were 18,
So
so
full degree.
I didn't get into that course and I did law.
you did law
So-
instead.
My backup.
Phil Goff was the director at the time, a long time ago, anyway, sorry.
So, you know, so when you were 18 and went to AUT and did your comms degree, and AUT's got one of the best comms programs in the country and has had for a really long time, you know, you learn a whole broad range of skills that as an 18-year-old you didn't have. But we've all got people who aren't 18, they're in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and we need to upskill them, like your engineers who need to learn about AI. You're not going to pack them off to university to do a 3-year degree, but some short courses in some very targeted areas would be really useful.
And I would just say, look, it's a bit cheesy, but actually it's all required, right? And if you think about universities, you know, non-instrumental, pointless degrees and arcane things are still really important, right? I want my children to do them, right? Because in the end, that's what being human is about, right? Robots can do robot shit. And, you know, I want my kids to, if they're into art history, to learn lots of shit about that at a university in a 3-year degree, right? And maybe it's the snob in me, I don't know, but that, you know, so I think that is still important, and it's fashion to say, oh, it's not now, and it's all da 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 da. But what's also true if we think about technology is the points I made earlier, which is in the end, there are a lot of jobs in very fulfilling, exciting, lucrative jobs in technology these days that are quite vocational, that don't require, you know, a PhD in physics. And we need courses that are helping people, young people, get into those things. So, you know, I think, yeah, as I say, it's a bit cheesy, but all of that stuff is true. But I don't think we should just dismiss. It's very fashionable. That's, oh, we don't need universities. I want higher education. I want fancy universities. There'll always be room for elite. New Zealand needs more of it, not less. It's part of our long-term problem, actually, that we haven't focused enough on that.
Again, I'll take a different tack. Post-COVID, there's a lot of work from home. I think, and I'll come back to the university thing because it's connected in a way. I think people working in the office, people going to universities, they meet with like-minded people, and if you're going to be creative, you need to be in an environment either in the office or in university or at school where you're with innovative, like-minded people, so you can feed off each other and come up with new ideas. So sitting at home on the computer using your chat GPT is not actually going to enhance society. You might get the day job done, but you're not going to innovate. So I think universities are a great example of bringing like-minded people together. I did Auckland University Engineering School, by the way, and it got me a job overseas the day I graduated, and I came back to this country after 12 years. So there's lots of examples where people get greater experience by having been through that environment. And they always talk about, oh yes, but so-and-so was a dropout and look how they founded hyperscaler X, Y, or Z. Actually, most of them were doing PhDs at the time. They already had their basic master's degrees, and they fed off each other in that university environment and created Facebook or Google or, you know, Microsoft or whatever it was, because they were in a university environment feeding off each other and solved a problem, and then dropped out and formed a company that's worth billions of dollars and hang on for the big ride and didn't sell out for 10 million. So
And universities would regard those people dropping out and forming companies as a success.
I think they're a success.
No,
Yeah, I do.
universities
I'm
will
saying they are.
absolutely believe that that's a
Absolutely.
success.
They're the
That's a
sort of
really big
people
tick because
I look up to.
that's part of why
So they
universities.
form that environment, and also universities teach you how to learn new stuff. And if you don't learn new stuff, you might as well hang up your clogs now. That's my 2 pennies.
Very good. Thank you. I mean, another question at the front here.
New Zealand's biggest problem seems to be money, whether it's for water infrastructure, this, that, or the other, and investment in generating. How does New Zealand generate the revenue to be able to afford generating a tech future that we
I mean,
famous?
yeah, I think acknowledging that you know, money is an issue, and you know, I think Tony made a really good point earlier that you have to think about the tech space. Talking to a couple of you know, your examples of that, where your company was owned by New Zealand and now is owned by France and you know, Asia and so on, and that's, you know, in and ideal world, we'd have the capital here. So there's that private capital point. But I think, actually, my favourite quote at the moment, because I think it's a good one for New Zealand, that the government, the space the government's in is, Lord Rutherford, we don't have any money, so we have to think, and actually in the technology space, there's a lot of good stuff we could do in an Auckland context. It doesn't require any money. Actually requires Judith Collins to do some work. Why aren't we looking at and moving into regulatory sandboxes in the fintech space, allowing a bunch of fintech companies to kind of go for it and be quite creative around what they're doing in their regulatory work. And another one thing which I'm sure that the countries you referred to will have done well is those precincts, there's hubs, whether it's in fintech or whether it's in health tech, of bringing people together, co-locating them, as scientists, as medical practitioners, as technology folk, to let the magic happen. We don't do that very well. We could definitely do a better job of that. The University of Auckland, sorry, but it's the University of Auckland in this case, their new market precinct would be a really good space to do that around health or med tech. It's got the hospital next door or very close. It's got the med school and so on. So, that costs some money, but fundamentally that doesn't have to cost a lot. So I think there's a bunch of things we could do that would G up some already pretty good sectors. But while I'm on a roll, if health tech is worth I think 2.3 billion per annum for New Zealand, there's absolutely no excuse for it not to become a $5 billion sector in 5 or so years. It just should. It wouldn't even, and what is probably a $500 billion sector in the United States, but we're not going to get there just by kind of moping our way around. We'll have to do some of the things I'm saying and be reasonably adventurous.
Great, thanks. We're going to have to wrap up very soon. Does anyone have any burning questions before we go?
Just on the investment one, just quickly. In the United States, you've got your angel investors and there's a lot of money that gets reinvested. We probably don't have that. In Canada, there's huge R&D tax breaks, 50% in the dollar gets reinvested for R&D. So those are two models that I've seen overseas work quite well. The one thing I would say that's provocative, I think Craig, you criticised the current government. I would say during COVID, what if the government, instead of giving handouts, had actually given loans to start up new high-tech companies? Imagine that. Right now, there's probably be 4 or 5 of them that would actually be starting to return to the economy, right, and would have a new profit centre rather than a no money in the coffers. So, we had an opportunity during COVID probably to create some new startups, which we missed a trick on.
I mean, I think one thing that, just keep that. One thing the current government's kind of not quite understand. I appreciate it's an area, it's a period of fiscal restraint, and probably for good reason, is money that's used badly is spending. Money that's put into things that are going to create growth and productivity is an investment. And there is a difference between these two things.
Liz, any final thoughts from you?
No, that's very much wrap up.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for coming. I think before we finish, we're going to pass over to Liz to do a quick overview of the tech leaders and your role there and the role that you play within.
Okay. Thank you. So the purpose of this morning was also to relaunch the Tech Leaders Executive, which is now under the Two Hands banner. And it's really an advocacy group of senior people in the tech industry, CIOs, and from companies like HP or Google, who get together 3 or 4 times a year and look at how to influence government and what recommendations to make to government to advance the tech industry and the investment that's needed, and actually the revenue growth. Our next meeting is I'm looking at Craig now. It's going to be in Wellington with the minister. Date yet to be confirmed. So we'll be in touch, or Craig and the team will be in touch with you about that. But if you'd like to join the group, then please do let Craig know, and he'll send out further information after today. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz, and thanks everyone again. Make sure you do download the report, or Craig said he'll send it to you all afterwards. So we do appreciate your time in coming here, and your time in doing interviews with Craig beforehand. We will be doing it again hopefully next year. So if you missed your chance this year, please get involved next year. And One New Zealand's really proud to sponsor it and support 2Ns in all of these things, and how do we make sure that New Zealand is an awesome place to live and grow for the longer term. So thank you very much. Craig, is there anything you want to wrap up on, final thoughts from you? And then otherwise, I think everyone can get on to off the day. We do have more food and coffee at the back there, so please do feel free to take those. Come grab a chits chat. But yeah, thank you again from us. Appreciate you coming here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
See you.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.